All right, let's take a look at where we left off. I'm going to go ahead and press play. And see here that we have a pretty nice walk cycle. It doesn't look bad. Now what we should do is we're going to tackle what the front looks like, because we got the side down. Looks pretty good. Could be better with the graph editor and all that good stuff. But what we want to do again is sort of exaggerate this a little bit. And what we're doing is we're creating this generic walk that we can later use to build zombie walks or whatever we want in addition to this walk. So, all right, so let's take a look. So this right here is frame one, is 1 and 13, and everything in between this is, or this is 1, this is 13, this is 25. And so really the major poses we're looking at is 1, 7, right? So let's hit A to select all of this. It's frame 1, we want to phrase like this if we're looking at the legs. And then 7 is where that leg is up. And then it's really the inverse, right? So 13, which is here, right? And that's this one here. We go over to frame 19 here, and that's our other counterpose. Now, really, this is, it's just the inverse of what we have here. It's flipped. All right, so what are we looking at here? Well, as we take a step, we have kind of this natural rotation in the foot. So I'm going to select that, hit Shift Space, and select Rotate. And I'm just going to, let's see if we can rotate that on the one axis. I'm going to rotate that out a little bit. And like I was telling you earlier, or in the last tutorial, let's hit N here, and then let's really just straighten this out, minus Y. I'm going to move this to, let's do minus 12. And then it's on auto key here. So I'm really just going to copy that key, right, with this selected, that foot selected. Select that summary here, hit Control C, and then go all the way to frame 25, and then click on that top and just paste it. So that way we have a nice, and we're getting some pretty good stuff. See how it's like, it's got a nice little pop, slides in. And then on frame 7, what happens is that foot, even though they have it arched out here, it really should be straight. So I'm just going to go in here and just make sure that on 7, that foot is just, it goes straight like that. All right, let's go over to frame 13. And if you remember on 1, that value is minus 12. So if we go over to 13, you want to do your best to try to keep those values the same. So I'm just doing a positive 12 because across this coordinate graph, this axis here, is the positive values, and then we go this way is negative. So there's 12. So let's look at that. So that's nice. We've got a nice little pop. The feet are looking pretty good there. The next thing I'm going to do is let's go back to frame 1, and let's move up those hips. You want to make sure that your hips, and it's this little guy here, is all zeroed out. And then when we get to 7, we have this contrapposto going on. And what that is our hip, because there's weight, we're lifting that leg up. What we want to do is we want to rotate this just a little bit. So I'm going to do 10 there, and that's just going to make up for that hip shift. And because it almost looks off balance here, that this leg is coming over, what happens is the center of our gravity goes over that foot, the center of the foot. So I'm going to select here that our big kind of like butterfly shaped controller, and I'm going to hit W, or I'm sorry, I'm going to hit Shift Space and select Move. W is the hotkey for Maya. Sorry, I'm recording tutorials in Maya at the same time, so forgive me. But I'm just going to move this over until the center of my mass is roughly above the foot. And let's just use these values. So let's do a minus 0.05. And then what that means is we're going to go all the way to frame 13. Make sure that that's okay, because that's our up and down. But go all the way to frame 19 then. I'm just double checking that that this isn't moving, because we want it to be straightened out, remember, on frames 1, 25, and 13. So on frame 19, let's see, what was that again? Was it minus 0.05? Yeah. So I'm going to copy that just so that I don't forget it. And I'm going to go all the way to frame 19 here. And I'm going to paste that in, but we want to get rid of that minus because it's the opposite side. So let's go ahead and watch that. and we get a little bit of poppiness. The other thing that we're forgetting is, remember we have that hip rotation here, which was 10. So we're gonna go all the way over here to frame 19. And we're gonna make this a minus 10. And so we get a little bit, and again, it could be too much movement, too much side to side, which I think I'm getting a little bit too much side to side. Like she's really jutting out here. So maybe let's make it a little more less subtle. Oh, wrong side, wrong thing. Let's do 10 here. I'm looking at this guy. Let's do minus 0.03 maybe. And let's go to 19 here. Just make this 0.03. It's looking a little more natural actually. And maybe there's too much up and down, but we haven't gotten to the graph editor yet, so we're okay. Now the last thing we're going to do is, and he doesn't really show it here, but what happens is your weight as it's coming over that foot here, your knee, this knee, starts to point out this way. It becomes like this motion, this rotating or clapping motion. So I'm going to go minus 0.05 here, but I want to go back to frame 4 and make sure that this is zeroed out here. The knee is straight, and that way you can see it's really accentuated by the no movement on 4 and then that subtlety of going off to the side here. So back on 10, I want to make sure that's zeroed out, which looks good. So let's go over to 19 here. Let's select that knee, and let's do, was it 0.05? And then we want to just make sure that it is on 16, which is the opposite of 4. We just want to make sure this is zeroed out. Let's take a look at that. Not bad knee movement. Yeah, so those legs look pretty good. Not bad at all. I mean, there are subtle things like you can do, like when our foot like comes down here, I sometimes will offset it so that the toe hangs a little bit, but I don't think we have a toe controller unless it's in a different section that I'm not seeing. But we have a lot of our switches and stuff. But for now, I think that's good. And I would like let the toe hang, and then as it hits, it would let it pop. So I think that's pretty good for just the generic walk for the second half of our tutorial. And then what we'll do is we'll move our way up from the hips to the torso and shoulders and stuff. And that'll be our tutorial for next week, or next assignment.